Hello and welcome to Skyline Game Engine tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to look at materials. First, click on the ball. We'll put ball in the scene. Press F to remove it. Let's scroll in. Press Alt. Now a little tip, if you've got Alt pressed, you can actually use the middle mouse button and keep an orbit, say, at the bottom, or drag down and show the orbit at the top. Release the Alt key and press again and the orbit's reset. And also, without Alt pressed, we can still pan the scene. Here's a handy tip. Okay, let's move that over there. Let's open the Asset Manager. In the Asset Manager, we shall select a material. The materials are round, textures are square. We'll drag that onto the ground. And if you notice, it's a bit of a pain because I've got to reselect the Asset Manager again and go find the next colour. Drop that on there, and it's disappeared. We'll deal with that in a minute. But first, if that object's selected, we can press this square at the far right of the left hand side of the toolbar in the properties, and we can see the submaterials. Any submeshes, submaterials will all show up in here. If you right click on one of them, you can click that, and it'll show the actual materials or the folder where the material came from in the Asset Manager. Now, to keep the Asset Manager on the surface, we can click the pin. Now, we can click anywhere on the scene and the Asset Manager stays there. There we go. Right, what we'll do now is bring in an asset from a known asset provider. The easiest way to do this is to drag the FBX directly into the scene itself. This will do all the conversion for you. It'll create the mesh. If I go up to the folder and click on the folder again, we can see, because all this is doing is reloading the folder and ensuring that everything's in the resources. Don't have to do that step, but I've just done that so you can see the contents. Now let's go back to the scene and we can see the object is rather large. Let's get rid of the Asset Manager for now. To get rid of the size, click the utility, and this is for translation. I'm on the wrong object, not a problem. Let's go back to that object. Uniform scale, do that. And I found for this asset provider, this putting a 2 on the end will actually work. Now you're going to come into a problem once you've scaled a large object. Because if I double click in the scene list, like we were doing before to jump in the previous tutorial, to jump to an object, we can see it's thrown us right out. This is because the bounds of the object are still large. All we've done is scale the object in the scene. The scale isn't set onto the object itself. To do that, using the translation utility, we click Bake Scale. That will convert all the scaling we've done, or any of the translation, down to the object. We then have to reload the entity itself, so make sure it's selected, and then click the E in the toolbar. Now if we double click, it's taken us directly to the object. So let's shut the scale down and let's move into the object. Now let's pan, move it across. That's the middle mouse wheel button, and with it selected we can either right click and select material, edit material, or we can go into the toolbar and select this icon here. And that brings up our material editor. Inside the material editor we have slots which should be albedo for the norm. We've got normal, roughness, metallic, AO, displacement and emission. I'll move that over there, put the object in the middle. Okay, bring up the Asset Manager again. Make sure, yep, we need that pin again. Now we're going to just drag the albedo from the Asset Manager directly into the square on the material editor. Make sure we've got the correct square. There we go. And for some reason it's gone yellow, so let's select white. Here we are. Now we need the normal, drag and drop. And we need the roughness. We'll drag and drop that on there. Okay, Click Save. This saves this submaterial. And as I mentioned before, this panel here shows all the submaterials. Also, in this panel here, those same submaterials are shown. This button, this Save, only saves the selected submaterial. This button will save all submaterials in this panel. Right, let's click Save, make sure I did do that. Let's have a look at the object. Let's close you down. Let's move this over here. Let's orbit the object. Let's get rid of that sphere. To delete something, select, press delete. Let's back to this. There's something doesn't quite look right with it. And usually that's the case, especially with this provider. Their normals actually are facing the opposite way. So top becomes bottom, bottom becomes top. We have a utility in our material editor which can combat this. If we go down to the normal section on the very last tab, we can flip the vertical. By doing so, we can see the shadows of where they should be. Click Save once again to ensure it's in there. And that is setting up a material. And if you want to ensure that that material now is linked to this object, this model, we can bake to mesh file. And that's just asking us if we want to do that. Now, if we reset default, it's how we set it up. Otherwise, it would have come probably in with a different material. Depends what you've been doing with your model prior to this. Okay, now let's just give it a little bit more contrast in here. If you want to get your shadows a little bit darker, a bit more contrast, we go to the Render Settings tab, to the End Map Scale, and just dial this back with the middle wheel, and we can see a little bit more contrast come into the scene. And there we have basic use of the material editor. Thank you again, and bye.